We Are Change with host Howard Nema. Exposing the collectivist global elite's Malthusian quest for a new world order. A one-world dictatorial government where all aspects of human life are under their control. Truth Talk Radio, where news the mainstream media ignores is the top story and your voice is heard. Every Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. and every Saturday, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's We Are Change with Howard Nema. Fridays, 1 to 3 p.m. and Saturdays, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Only on informedradio.com.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Howard Nema, and you are listening to We Are Change, where the news the mainstream media ignores is the top story, and your voice is heard. And here is a big story. Former President George Bush and former Prime Minister Tony Blair are being prosecuted in Malaysia for war crimes, exposing their evil, exposing the evils of the New World Order, which is why I am here. Now, these puppets are going to be taking the fall for the global elite, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, the owners of the Federal Reserve System, the warmongering military-industrial complex. Okay, these are the criminals who have hijacked our government and use these selected individuals to do their bidding. Now, Malaysia is prosecuting Bush and Blair. Of course, they should be prosecuting Rice and Cheney and Rumsfeld and Clinton and all of them that are complicit in this evil war crimes. Goes back to
the Kuala Lumpur War Crimes
many years,
Tribunal started its hearing
We are not
against
the good
former
guys.
US President George Bush
That's just
and
Hollywood.
former British Prime Minister Tony Blair in the Malaysian federal capital. This is the first time that war crimes charges are heard against the two former heads of states in compliance with due legal process. The Kuala Lumpur War Crimes Commission said both Bush and Blair had participated in the formulation of executive orders and directives to exclude the applicability of all international conventions and laws. This include the Geneva Convention, Convention Against Torture, Declaration of Human Rights, and the United Nations Charter in relations to the wars launched by the US and Britain in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Until today, there has been no judicial pronouncement based on the facts and the evidence pertaining to the invasion of Iraq. This has been based on an investigation since 2009, right? So the complaints were received from the war victims and investigated by the Kuala Lumpur War Crimes Commission.
This hearing comes after 2 years of investigation by the Commission, which heard shocking testimonials from war victims. One complainant told the Commission in 2009 that he was detained for 6 years in Guantanamo Bay on mistaken identity, tortured and subjected to inhumane treatment. An Iraqi woman prisoner said she was used as a human shield while being transported on a helicopter by being placed near the open doors.
It is very important that this tribunal make a sound judgment against Bush and Blair that will indicate their, in this trial, responsibility for waging a Nuremberg crime against peace, which is along the lines of what the Nazis did in World War II.
The US and Britain have repeatedly said the so-called war against terror is targeted at terrorists. The tribunal would adjudicate and evaluate the evidence presented on facts and law and is presided by 7 judges from Malaysia and overseas.
This War Crimes Tribunal would decide next week if former US President George Bush and former British Prime Minister Tony Blair are guilty of war crimes charges. And if found guilty, the Kuala Lumpur War Crimes Foundation would try and lobby their respective governments to start an internal investigation or charge them in an international court. Maheshwari Ramakrishnan, Press TV, Kuala Lumpur.
Wow, imagine that. Have them tried here in America. Incredible. The seams are starting to burst. The curtain is starting to fall. The men behind the scenes, pay attention to them. They're controlling the world and trying to get away with it. The UN speaks peace and makes war. We are looked at, America is looked at as one of the most savage nations on earth by everyone else except Americans. Wake up. These evil people are mind controlling us, using us, and abusing us. Okay, in other news, today is November 19th, 2011, the 180th birthday of James Garfield, the 20th President of the United States. I'll be doing a great little bio on him and have a selection from Shadow and Darkness, my film, which can be seen on YouTube / Freedom First Films, or just put in Shadow and Darkness when you're on YouTube and you'll get it, or Google Shadow and Darkness. It's just an explanation of how the New World Order has gained its control over the world. A lot of news to go over today. And keep in mind that we have to take action against these criminals. You know, they have hijacked our government. They have taken everything that so far from us that we've lost. Jobs, property, money, potential income, lowered our standard of living. They are the ones responsible. Make no mistake. Today happens to also be what would have been the 180th birthday of President James Garfield. During the break, the hour break, I will play actually an excerpt from a film that I made called Shadow and Darkness, which you can see on Freedom First Films, YouTube / Freedom First Films. And it's called Shadow and Darkness. This is an excerpt, again, it's just a historical viewpoint of the Garfield assassination in relations to banking. A lot of interesting characteristics. He was a reformer, another example of somebody that there's no true proof that he was taken out by any type of plan or any conspiracy, but it certainly elevated the New World Order, Illuminati control grid agenda to where it is at this point. He was a reformer, wanted to vent out corruption. He was a minister, very interesting character. I'll be going over that in a little while with the president, the 20th president of the United States, whose birthday is today, the 19th of November. And he would have been 180 years old. Obviously, he would have been dead unless he was a Rockefeller or a Rothschild. I think David Rockefeller will be like our grandchildren. And David Rockefeller is now 143 because they have all the right life extension technologies and eating the proper foods and the proper nutritional things that they need, while they poison basically the rest of the world through the GMO foods, big pharma's mixture of poisons that people take as they call treatments or for ailments, as well as the vaccines and all of this other nonsense mixed in with the fluoride in the water and the electrolytes, the radiation. And now you have raised levels of radiation from Fukushima, but it's okay. The EPA just says we'll just raise the limits. My son's actually purchasing online. I couldn't believe it's this much money, but I said, why not? God forbid. Hopefully, we won't need it. But he's very into science and is very wide awake as to what's going on with the radiation, and it sort of bothers him. He knows where the rads are moving. Like I said the other day, there is a website. I should ask him. I will during the break, and I'll come back. Where you can track the radiation and how it moves, because it actually does move with the winds and the trade winds, and it's amazing what a 12-year-old can enlighten a 44-year-old. Anyhow, so interestingly enough, this radiation has, so let's get a Geiger counter. Let's just check what radiation is. So maybe I could also utilize it. Not as expensive as you might think, but a couple $100, and you can get them on the internet, and you could just check the radiation levels. Why not? You never know. So we're going to have a Geiger counter. Maybe I'll do some interesting research with it. Who knows? Maybe the whole room is hot. Maybe the whole place is hot. Maybe everywhere we go is hot. We don't even realize it, much more so. Go to a doctor's office and see what it is in the waiting room, for example. Interesting, right? See if there is all this safety. I mean, after all, dentists put these, they go behind lead walls and put lead all around them. Meanwhile, these other machines and these naked body scanners that people are going through, everyone's getting radiation. It would be interesting to see if there's any, like if it would go, make that sound. That would really freak me out. If I just turned it on and it started going, that would just really freak me out. But interesting experiment. Digressing. I'm just sort of rambling there. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. So what else has been going on? Speaking about big pharma and all the evil and all the things that the elite are, pushing on us while they extend their lives, hopefully to 180, like Garfield would be today. The U.S. researchers in big pharma have been conducting experiments on humans in Africa. Now this has been going on for a long time and finally hit the mainstream news and enough sources so they have to admit it. But nothing, of course, just like most things, nothing's being done. When they expose the evil, people just sort of tend to forget about it. They hear it, they report it, oh, it's terrible, and that's the end of it. Well, a new policy brief faults prominent institutions and drug companies like Pfizer, Columbia University, Johns Hopkins University, the Population Council, for their involvement in unethical and illegal human experimentation in Africa. This is from the People's Constitution. The report is titled Non-Consensual Research in Africa, the Outsourcing of Tuskegee, in reference to the illegal human experiments that were done in Tuskegee, Alabama between 1932 and 72 by the U.S. Public Health Service, now what we know as social services, or Health and Human Services, okay? It is eugenics, all right? In that experiment, some 600 impoverished African-American men were observed in a study on the progression of untreated syphilis. This is well known. Don't have to go into that. Everybody's, even mainstream news people have reported this. People just have to understand this. This also happened in Guatemala. It's happening now in Africa. In one experiment on HIV sponsored by Gilead Sciences, the Center for Disease Control, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and operated by Family Health International, Cameroonian subjects were given details about the experiment in English, even though many spoke only French and were illiterate. 5 women were allegedly infected with HIV in the experiment, but were not given antiviral drugs. Oh, that's nice. In another experiment in Nigeria, led by Pfizer physicians, researchers injected children with an antibiotic called Trovan during a meningitis outbreak without providing their families with informed consent forms that fully disclosed the side effects and purpose. 11 children died and many were left paralyzed. Okay, so this is big pharma saying, go get your Gardasil shots, go get your flu shots, stabbing it down your throat everywhere you go. You go any place, you go to Walmart. Now Walmarts are going to be having limited services. They're going to be having actually doctors, APRNs or whatever you call them, to do basic physicals and stuff at Walmart. I mean, this is just getting, I can't believe, first of all, the people are putting up with that and saying, well, that's good, unbelievable the way we're being manipulated, and you wonder why it's $15,000 a year for health insurance. You wonder why it costs so much, because there's so much unethical, crazy shit. They're stealing from us moment by moment. Every day, they just continually find ways to deceive and use insurance. And they own the insurance companies, they own the banks, the rates. Everything is all. It's a rigged game, ladies and gentlemen, and we're all participating in it. And they're keeping the rates high. They're hoarding all the money and asking the governments to take on the debt for the people across the world. It's unbelievable.
War Crimes Tribunal started its hearing against former U.S. President George Bush and former British Prime Minister Tony Blair in the Malaysian federal capital. This is the first time that war crimes charges are heard against the two former heads of states in compliance with due legal process. The Kuala Lumpur War Crimes Commission said both Bush and Blair had participated in the formulation of executive orders and directives to exclude the applicability of all
Minister Tony Blair are being prosecuted in Malaysia for war crimes, exposing their evil, exposing the evils of the New World Order, which is why I am here. Now, these puppets are going to be taking the fall for the global elite, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, the owners of the Federal Reserve System, the warmongering military-industrial complex. Okay, these are the criminals who have hijacked our
Time. That's We Are Change with Howard Nema. Fridays 1 to 3 p.m. and Saturdays 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Only on informedradio.com.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Howard Nema, and you are listening to We Are Change, where the news the mainstream media ignores is the top story, and your voice is heard. And here is a big story. Former President George Bush and former Prime Minister...
We Are Change with host Howard Nema. Exposing the collectivist global elite's Malthusian quest for a new world order. A one-world dictatorial government where all aspects of human life are under their control. Truth Talk Radio, where news the mainstream media ignores is the top story and your voice is heard. Every Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. and every Saturday, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard
government, and use these selected individuals to do their bidding. Now, Malaysia is prosecuting Bush and Blair. Of course, they should be prosecuting Rice and Cheney and Rumsfeld and Clinton and all of them that are complicit in this evil war crimes. Goes back to
the Kuala Lumpur